Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey, Connected Life fam. Justin here, as always. And I am stoked about today's episode. We're going to talk about sex and sexuality. And our very close friend, Ruth Outram, is jumping in to talk with us about that. She is currently getting her doctorate in clinical psychology, and she's one of our master consultants that works inside of our life consulting masterclass. So she's one of the main faces around our environment. We love who she is and what she carries. So before we get into this conversation about sexuality, I just want to remind everybody that applications for our life consulting masterclass are happening right now. You can go apply for that year-long course. It wraps up in 10 months. That is on Justin and Abby. That's abi.com. And you can go to the masterclass page and you can get all the information that you need to get a pretty good overview of what it is. And with that said, we're going to take just a quick pause to listen to a testimony from one of our students about the powerful experience that they've had engaging in this course this year. And we hope that this testimony helps you get a good idea of what Life Consulting Masterclass is like and also leaves you with inspiration for your own life. And then we're going to jump mid-conversation into our sexuality dialogue. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into that testimony now.
Honestly, I remember when we first started this class, Justin, you were talking about like guys, like as you go through this, you guys are going to learn how to be on your own team. And I remember when I initially heard that, I was like, oh, I just feel like that's not going to happen for me because it's so far from what I was used to growing up. And I just remember just having those thoughts come up in my head. And so I really had to learn to let go of it has to happen this year, what it looks like to be on my own team. And I grew up with panic attacks for years since I was like 8, and I've done all the SOZOs, all the spiritual stuff, all the, let's break that off in Jesus' name, and fought really hard and still haven't found anything. And it's just, and it like blows my mind. I was literally telling somebody yesterday that for the first time, I'm actually able to regulate.
Wow.
Come on, dude.
Because my panic attacks were so strong that they would last 3 hours, 5 hours.
Yeah,
and
that's torment. I know what those are.
And I would just like pace in my house and I would like rush to like read my Bible or like play a worship song and it wouldn't work. And it's like literally like I feel like when I have a moment of anxiety and I feel like my heart's beating fast or I just feel stressed, like I actually feel like, okay, I know the language for what's going on. I'm triggered and I know how to like get back to a place of grounding myself.
Wow.
And it literally takes like 5 to 10 minutes now, opposed to 3 hours. And so I was like telling my friend, like, this stuff freaking works. I was like, it's crazy. And like, it just makes you like want to cry just because when you live with years and years and years of just panic attacks to like being able to regulate within 5 to 10 minutes, it's literally like, it's like, I think I could like, you literally get this feeling of like, wow, I know I can thrive in life. I know that I can do this and I know that I could do it. And so like, I had this day where I was at the park. This was probably mid LCMC and I was just walking around and I just had this moment of just feeling like I just wanted to like cry because I was like, oh my gosh, I literally just feel like I've had more rest than I've ever had in my life. And I just feel like rest is a good friend. Like I'm in an intimate relationship with a person called rest. And it just like blew my mind that I even had that thought and that feeling. And the crazy thing is I've noticed like the more that I actually am able to find safety in my own body, the more I'm actually able to give it to other people. And so it's just been so freaking huge. And I'm just so thankful for the school, for you guys. And it's just been awesome.
That was a great testimony. Man, I just love getting to hear that again. Anyways, all right, let's get into this episode. Let's go sex.
Welcome, Ruth Outram. We are so excited to have you as a guest.
What did I step into?
So nice to be here.
We're going to have kind of a series with you, maybe a little bit. It's going to be Sex and Money with Dr. Ruth Outram. You're going to be
Sounds
a doctor.
edgy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does.
Sound edgy. Sex and money.
It sounds like we're trying to get clickbait.
Yeah, really.
And we're actually not.
Yeah,
These are just the topics
Yeah,
on our
this
minds.
is when you decided to do a video when we talk about sex and money.
Yeah.
funny.
But
It's on YouTube.
you're going to be a doctor soon.
I am. Well, in 3 years' time.
Soonish.
I mean,
Soonish.
soonish.
Yeah.
Kind of
You're in
soon.
your doctorate
Kind of
program.
It's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
It's begun.
Which makes like everything you have to say moving forward, like
Extra.
A little bit of
True.
extra
True.
kudos.
potent.
Potent?
Believable. Yeah,
Yes.
because the shit we say on here, I make this up. She went to school for it.
That's funny.
Anyways,
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about sexuality.
yeah, I'm going to get
Ooh.
educated.
Yeah. This is something that me and Ruth have processed a good amount of, but haven't really talked to you about. So this is just you,
Kept you in the dark.
along for the ride.
Where is the female G spot? I thought I knew.
You do know. You don't have to worry about that. You've hit that just fine.
Oh, my.
I got that down.
Oh, my.
So
Oh, my.
I don't need to be
Clickbait,
educated on that.
clickbait.
You can tell our listeners where it is.
Okay, so that's not what we're talking about. We're
Yeah,
not talking about that. Ruth and I have had a conversation around sexuality and the different kinds of ways that it shows up. And one of the things I've really appreciated about Ruth is that she has gone on a journey to understand her sexuality, what makes it tick, like what engages it and what doesn't, why she doesn't respond to certain things, why she responds to a lot of things. And I think a lot of times people have so much shame about their sexuality that they don't get curious about it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think, oh, there's probably something that makes sense here for me.
Yeah.
They just think, oh, I'm broken. I'm not like everyone else. There's something wrong with me. I don't have, and it locks them up and shuts them down instead of what you have done, which is you've gone on the journey of shame resilience, being like you've shared about your journey. You've broken free of shame enough to then go on the journey to understand yourself more and more and more. And I have been thinking that this conversation would be really good for single people, married people. I mean, sexuality affects every single human. And I think
Good for humans.
the more we can understand it, not only does it give us compassion for ourselves, it also can help us understand the people we're relating to.
That's really good. Also, I remember you used to have a giant shame monster when it came to sexuality. So I think it's really fun that these are conversations.
Massive
you can have.
shame monster.
Yeah.
Crawl
Get
under
it.
the table, hide, rock backwards and forwards. No.
I do think you thought you were the one broken person.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Let's give like a quick background on how you got to the place where you felt free enough to learn about it. And then we can just jump into what you've learned that has been so helpful.
Yeah, I think I was always super aware growing up that I didn't have the same relationship with attraction that maybe some of my other friends had.
Yeah.
Where I would be, you'd have like your group of girlfriends and they'd be boy crazy and they'd be like, oh my gosh, this guy is so hot. And like, I love his arms or I love his legs or I just love to watch him play soccer. And I'd be like sat in these conversations like,
Yeah.
okay. But I just didn't have that relationship with attraction towards men. That I didn't find myself drawn in that way. I didn't find myself pulled in that way. It felt like this thing that was happening for everybody else, not happening for me. There was a lot of shame, a lot of judgment around, well, what does that then mean about my sexuality? Is it broken? Is it not working? I began to notice a pattern around guys that I would be attracted to. And it, generally speaking, was guys who were attracted to me.
I love that.
Which sounds a little narcissistic. But as soon as I felt like a guy was interested in me, all of a sudden he became so much more attractive.
Yes.
And I could find him physically attractive, emotionally attractive, engage in dating or, whatever.
I remember there was a guy you had gone on a date with, and I was like, are you attracted to him? And you didn't know.
Yeah.
Because you weren't sure how he felt about you.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you weren't actually sure if you were attracted to him yet.
I was like, I don't know, maybe not. Oh, it's on.
Yeah. I do like him now. I do find him attractive. Yes.
And again, there was a lot of shame and self-judgment in that. Like, what's that about?
Yeah.
And, is that something quite selfish and narcissistic about me? Like, why am I only attracted to people who are attracted to me? And so much shame, so much judgment. But I've always been really curious about my own experience. I've had a really strong conviction about running at shame, running at spaces. I felt, you'd probably agree with this, shame has been the predominant emotion that's driven my life.
Yeah.
Justin's like, yes.
Does that feel true
Under
for
the
you
table?
Too? Or you're just saying that's the predominant emotion for her?
That's a predominant emotion
yeah.
for her. Absolutely ashamed.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it controlled and governed and put me in a box in so many different areas of my life. And learning that I could get free from shame by becoming more curious about my experience, learning to have more compassion towards myself and my experiences, learning to be more vulnerable with them and let people in has helped me break shame. And I got this really deep conviction of like, I don't want to live as somebody who's controlled by shame.
Yes.
It might be my deepest feeling. It might be my deepest emotion, but I don't want to live my life as someone whose life is constrained by that fear and that emotion. And this translated over to attraction and sexuality as well. I was like, I would like to get married one day and have a functional relationship. So, it benefits me to understand my sexuality and attraction. But also I just don't want to feel trapped in a box of my own judgment and my own self-hatred and my own feeling like I'm the only person in the world that this doesn't resonate with. I'm the only person in the world who's got this backwards. So I started to go on the journey of getting really curious about my sexuality. Like, why am I not just attracted to guys walking down the street? Like, why am I mostly drawn to guys who are attracted to me first? What's actually going on inside of there?
Yeah.
I love that the part of breaking shame is curiosity. Like instead of participating with just judging the situation, I'm actually
bad or there's something broken with me or I don't work right.
Yeah. And start getting curious. Like there's curiosity that is judgment based, right? Which is like, why is it that I do this? What is wrong with me? Versus like, that's interesting. I wonder why this is the way that it is.
Yeah.
I want to find out more. And that investigativeness is really powerful.
Yeah.
But really difficult when we have shame around it.
Yeah.
I think shame kills our curiosity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because we're kind of like, I don't want to open that box.
So what if I find out that I'm really bad?
Yeah.
What if I find out that there is something really wrong with me? What if I find out that I am unlovable or I am just broken or I don't work the way everyone else does?
Yeah.
And I think ultimately around that, I had to get to a point where I was like, do you know what? I would rather just reconcile with the truth. Like maybe my sexuality is broken. But I would rather reconcile with the truth than continue to live in the fear of what if. And the fear, because the fear, like that shame is something that pulls you away from connection and pulls you away from intimacy and pulls you away from relationship. Whereas at least if I discovered that it was messed up, reconciled with it.
Right. And just accept like, this is a place that's messy and quote unquote broken, then it is what it is. And I don't have to like run away hide from it and people and stuff in this area.
Exactly.
So let's just open it up. Let's start talking about perceptive versus adaptive sexuality and what you've learned on that process.
So this was like a light bulb that I had quite recently. I came across this piece of research that where basically they interviewed a whole bunch of people about the types of people that they're attracted to or the things that they're attracted to in different people. And they kind of came up with this idea that attraction can be broken down into proceptive and adaptive. Mm-hmm. And we all have bits of both, but
it's a spectrum.
It's like a spectrum, yeah. But people will generally tend to have a little bit more of one than the other. And generally men will tend to have a little bit more of one and women will tend to have a little bit more of the other, but that's a generalization. We can all have both. So proceptive attraction would be that initial gut response.
Body reaction. So when people are walking down the street and they're like, oh my gosh, that guy's hot. Yeah. I just love to watch his muscles when he plays football. Like the immediate attraction that is like it's a thing that you're not engaging. It just like takes over you.
It just takes over. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know anything about that guy. Yep. I don't know his name. Don't know who he is, but I just like watching him. Yeah. And that feels great. Yeah. And vice versa for men towards women. Yes. Just
I don't know anything about that woman, but her body's amazing. I want to be with her.
Yeah, just that initial gut pull towards somebody would be proceptive. And we tend to say that men have a little bit more of that than women, but that's a generalization. Yep. I know lots of women who have lots of proceptive. Yes,
I do too.
Especially probably when you're going through like puberty, like your proceptive is probably
I think it just depends
pretty
on
high.
Who.
Yeah.
I think it's a very mixed bag because I think some women have the ability to lean into the perceptive and some are more adaptive.
Yes. In
puberty, I was as much adaptive as I am now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Same. And then the second one would be adaptive, which is where this isn't an innate sort of biological drive. This is things that you have learned feel good or don't feel good. This is things that you have learned. I really enjoy that, or that felt really life-giving, or that feels really safe, or that feels really fun, or that feels...
So feelings, adaptive is more of an emotional state of being that perpetuates sexuality. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, it was something that we feel we receive some benefit from, and then it reinforces to us, oh, this is a good thing.
So there's an experience that happens.
That is a positive. So maybe like, I think a great example was you've talked before about, I don't know if it was your best friend in college or there was a friend that you had where you felt so connected to.
Oh yeah.
You looked at me with such weird face.
I was like, are you trying to tell a coded story about me? Or are you actually,
I literally couldn't remember. And so, but like, I remember you describing the euphoric feeling you had when you felt accepted.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
For the first time.
Yeah, yeah. So I had a best friend when I was at university. So I would have been like 19, 20, something like that. And I came from this very emotionally disconnected family. Yeah. My mum had chronic depression for years. My dad was just shut down and disconnected from himself, disconnected from everyone else. So I had no concept of people emotionally meeting me anywhere. Yeah. I was kind of an island in and of myself. I just survived that way. So the idea of actually emotionally connecting with people was so foreign to me. And I became really good friends with this girl at university, and we spent a bunch of time together and started having conversations about things that we were afraid of. Yeah. You know,
vulnerability.
I know, vulnerability. I wouldn't have had that word back then, but like things that we were scared of, things that we really enjoyed, things like hopes, dreams, even places of shame. Again, I wouldn't have had that word for it back then. And I just remember this euphoric feeling of being met by somebody. Yeah. Being somebody hearing my inner world, somebody accepting my inner world, somebody reciprocating and sharing their inner world and realizing, like I said, shame is one of my predominant emotions. And what I got to experience in some of those conversations was some breaking of shame and acceptance. I heard some of her experiences, which were the same as mine. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm not totally broken and messed up. Maybe I'm not, which again, if you grow up in emotional isolation, you tend to think, well, it must just be me. because my emotional world is the only one that I'm connected to.
Yeah.
This euphoric experience that like washed over me. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this?
Totally.
Am I attracted to this girl? Like, am I attracted to my friend? Why does this feel so good? I feel so like pulled into these conversations and pulled into relationship with her.
Well, and this is kind of adaptive can be, it's a physical experience still, because I think the emotional energy of feeling met, of feeling seen, of feeling connected to created an actual reaction and that's true of anything. Like when the sun is out, I have a reaction in my body to how it feels so good to have the sun on me. But so adaptive is just that awareness that those experiences in life can influence your sexuality. Is that how you would?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and then it's kind of like a positive enforcement. So the more you do it, the more attracted you become to it. So what has become very true of me is I'm very attracted to emotional intimacy. Like if I feel like I can be safe with somebody, if I feel like they're going to accept me and not judge me, they're going to be equally as open with me as I am with them, I find that the most attractive thing in the world.
Yeah.
And that's probably something that I came by some of that honestly and naturally. And then also my experiences have just sort of reinforced
over and over again.
This feels really good. I really enjoy this.
Yeah. I think I was thinking about this earlier. I very much believe that I understood this concept from a young age, just didn't know there was research and didn't have fancy words like perceptive and adaptive. But I do remember having this feeling that there are some people that are like driven by body more than emotional experience kind of a thing. And some people who are like maybe a little bit more like their sexuality is like a primal reaction. And that's not me trying to degrade it. It's more just me trying to say it's like a gut natural reaction. And then some people that are a little bit more emotionally malleable around sexuality. I remember thinking that, and I actually think, and I was sharing this before, I think I purposefully, I'd say the guy I dated before Justin had high proceptive, like his sexuality was very driven. And there was some really great things about that. Like he knew what he wanted and he wanted me. So that's nice. That felt great. And he was very like, driven by that. Like his sexuality probably, guided more of his life than, Justin. When I met Justin, he felt a little bit more adaptive, where I could tell that, that like the emotional, well, I mean, this would be a great example. Justin could see a woman and if she did something really emotionally unattractive, like if she criticized a man, he'd be like, that woman is unattractive to me.
Yeah.
Like that would be, ugh. Like,
no, thank you.
Her, even if she has a great body and a great face, if she does something like, and that happened to him when he was dating, there'd be these beautiful women who would hit on him, but he would be like, the way they hit on him, he'd be like, no. And that was different. That there are guys that I know that it could be a beautiful woman. It does not matter if she slices someone's throat in front of them. They're just like, wow, she's so hot. I want to get with that. Like it's not one of them is better than the other, but there are two different ways that sexuality really show up.
I have a lot of curiosity going on inside of me when this conversation's happening, because I've seen with my clients. So when you describe this, I wouldn't have used this language, but I've seen a lot of perceptive sexuality shift into adaptive as people got connected to their hearts. So when I saw men who suddenly actually were connected to their emotions, they suddenly were like, oh, I'm not attracted to that because that doesn't feel safe. And I'm not saying, I'm not even criticizing perceptive and saying like, oh, well, you're just not connected to your heart and that's your problem. But I am saying that I watched as something shifted inside of them where they were like, oh, I know what I want and what I need as far as my heart goes. Now the game has changed as far as my draw out here. How does that play a role in it? Or
my imagination would be that their perceptive stays the same. They just grow their adaptive awareness with it. That would be what my guess would be. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think there's something to be said as well about, you know, like you're saying, it's both of those things are connection to different things, aren't they?
Yeah.
So my adaptive is connected to my emotions, my emotional world. Whereas my perceptive is probably actually, I'm pretty connected to my body.
Yeah.
I'm
Which
pretty
is
connected
also
to my somatic experience. And I think we can grow in both of those things.
Yes.
Right.
So we
Okay.
can grow in connection to our emotional world and we can grow in connection to our body. And probably our attraction leans in those different directions depending on how connected we are.
Interesting.
Or disconnected we are.
Yeah, I would say that that's true. I think exactly what you said, the somatic for perceptive and the emotional. And I have seen a lot of, and you'll find like men who are very driven by body, all of a sudden when they recognize they don't feel safe in marriage, that starts to affect their sexuality.
Yeah.
When they start to realize that doesn't feel good. And I want this to feel good. Or women too. I think I've seen both sides have to grow. But so if you talking about this, how did this help you specifically in your own journey?
So I think it was a huge light bulb for me because, like I said, I'd had all this shame and all this judgment about why am I just not attracted to guys in the same way that some of my friends are? Why don't I walk down the street and feel that way? Or, you know, that's just never been me. Or why have I had these experiences with intimacy with, you know, female friends, male friends, any, you know, what's going on? Why does that feel so attractive to me? And I think finding this out felt really shame breaking because instead of it being like, oh, there's something broken and wrong about your sexuality, it was just kind of like, oh, I think I have way higher adaptive sexuality than I do proceptive sexuality.
Yes.
Which would make sense for somebody who grew up very isolated, like I am quite disconnected from my body and my somatic experiences. I can live life quite dissociated, like we've joked about it. I can be in a horrible situation and just not really affected by it. What did you say I was earlier? Dead inside?
That is a superpower you have.
Dead inside. So it makes a lot of sense that like if I'm pretty disconnected from that world, but I've really kind of gone on the journey of emotionally connecting and felt a lot of fruit from that, that I would then begin to learn and feel that that was attractive. And I think the other thing that it began to break shame for is we have all these ideas inside of culture of what attraction is supposed to be.
Yes.
So you are supposed to be attracted to the guy running down the football pitch with his muscles, and you know, clearly I'm not into it. But like, you know, there's like there's all these things like, oh, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to swoon in that way. You're supposed to feel really drawn to that, and that sort of plays into all these parts of judgment that we have about ourselves, where we're comparing ourselves to our friends, or we're comparing ourselves to TV characters' experiences or movie experiences, and we go, well, my experience isn't that.
Yeah.
So I think it just began to unwind and break some of that shame. I think it also showed me that the way that I've been working with my attraction and sexuality is I've been trying to force myself into being more perceptively attracted.
Yes.
Because that's what I thought.
Just force yourself to like that guy's forceps. Is that a body part?
Forceps?
Nope.
Biceps?
Biceps. I think forceps are like something you use.
Yep.
Yeah, no.
Sure. That guy has an amazing set of forceps.
Look at those forceps.
Biceps. What are these forearms? I was putting biceps
Forearms
and
and biceps.
together. Yeah.
Those glutes.
Those glutes. Wow.
So you've been forcing yourself to try to just grow this thing that is not natural to you.
That thing that is not natural, like, or I'm trying to force it to grow in a way, like rather than authentically connecting to my body and feeling safe in my body, forcing myself to feel attracted to something outside of myself, which I think is where the thing came into play around only feeling attracted to guys who were attracted to me, because then I get to feel something inside of that attraction. And so going on this journey, getting more curious, breaking the shame, I think has allowed me to feel a lot more open and accepting of myself and what I do feel attracted to and what I don't feel attracted to. So I found myself, you know, when I kind of found this information out, I was like, okay, I'm gonna really like tune in and pay attention to when I'm feeling drawn to men. Yeah. Like when I'm around them,
what is it?
I'm going to take off the table the idea that I have to be drawn to their muscles. I'm going to take off the table the idea that it has to look a certain way or not look a certain way. And I'm just going to get really curious and present with myself. What is it that I'm feeling drawn to if I feel drawn to something when I'm around a guy? And I work in a mental health team, and I have a few male colleagues, a few male psychologist colleagues, and I started to find them so attractive.
You're like, oh.
Yeah.
Each one of these.
Yeah.
I'm going to bed them.
Line them up. No. One of them was my significantly older than me, married supervisor. Right. But I began to notice that like draw inside, that pull inside of me. And I'm like, oh, why am I feeling pulled towards him? What is it? Oh, he's so curious. He's so non-judgmental and so curious. And that creates so much space and safety. And it makes me feel like I can come with my full self. It makes me feel like he's meeting me in a level of vulnerability. And that feels really attractive.
Well, another thing I think too, not to interrupt you, but I think you recognized emotional intimacy, like being able to talk about real things with men. Like I'd watched you go on dating apps and you'd go on dates, but not with men who had the same core values in emotional health as you. So it was superficial conversation, and your heart is literally drawn to having conversations of depth and being able to talk through humanity and things like that. And so even on dates, you could walk away being like, why am I not attracted to these men because of this thing? But they weren't even men that are in the wheelhouse of how your attraction works.
Right. And it was, and you know, to kind of put it like that, like then the dating became all about having to win them over rather than being tuned in to what I liked, what I found attractive, being present with that, feeling confident in that and leading with that and initiating connection in that way. It was like, okay, what does he want? What does he like? How do I become that in order to win him over?
Because if I win him over, then maybe I'll feel attracted.
Yeah, then maybe I'll feel attracted, or maybe there won't be something wrong or broken inside of me. Maybe it's proving something.
Yeah.
But you're so right. Like there was a dating relationship I was in, and we kind of started off, and he found me attractive, so I found that attractive. But I didn't necessarily super click with him. And then it wasn't until we had one or two moments where he got quite vulnerable with me, and then I was like, oh, I'm in. I'm in. I'm sold. I like him. And just recognizing actually that is a piece for me that I find really attractive.
Sorry.
You go ahead.
Go ahead. I mean, it's just interesting to me, probably because I'm adaptive, but that you could ever be hooked on someone based on physicality, based on perceptive.
You're so adaptive.
I'm like, how is that even possible that you could look past 10,000 red flags about who they are and how they show up to life, and like my brain can't wrap itself around
I'm glad
that.
you're bringing this up, because I think it's very easy to judge either side based on where you're at. So I judged you for being so adaptive.
Surprise.
What?
No, in our first year of marriage, Justin would
This is a news.
So this is like it's not news. This will just help you understand our story better, which is he wasn't. So if I walked by him naked, he didn't want to just jump my bones. It wasn't like instantly like now he's all over me. And I expected, based on what I'd seen culturally, because I think it often shows in TV, well, at least in the past, I think it's maybe changing, but it shows a man that is like so driven by body.
Yeah.
And so when he wasn't like that, like oftentimes we'd have sex like 2 times a day. And then I would want to have sex for a third. And I would be like, he's not attracted. What is wrong with him? What is wrong with his
Those were like 5-minute like throws in the hay, man. Those were like 45 minutes, an hour of going for it. I'm like,
Justin's like,
3
I am
hours of sex.
tired.
I'm broken.
Yeah. But the thing is I expected him to be perceptive. Because
Right.
that's what I thought masculinity was. And I
Yeah.
was terrified of perceptive.
Right.
So I subconsciously chose someone who wasn't, but then I had no idea how to reconcile that
Totally.
to me. And I think about this too. I was thinking when we were talking, we have a bunch of guy friends who were adaptive and they got called gay because they weren't driven in the same way towards women as other men were. And there was only, growing up when I was younger, there was only really 2 categories, like you're
So you're
straight
either-
or you're gay.
Right. And you're either,
I mean, I'm sure there was more categories than
sure,
that. I'm not trying to,
but no.
LGBTQIA, there's a lot. But what I was saying is there wasn't an option for, we have different ways our sexuality works.
Right.
And there's like a spectrum.
There was a sense for anyone. There were only culturally 2 categories. It was you have the perceptive, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you're totally straight as a guy, or you don't have perceptive and you're adaptive and you're for sure gay.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you need some emotional connection and stuff like that. And you're not
Yes.
just drawn to have sex with everything that walks past you.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And this is why I wanted to have this conversation, because even inside marriage, once you can understand this, you can start to learn how to meet your partner. So like I could learn, like with Justin, I had to learn to let go of the standards of what I thought it was supposed to be. And also find the gift of adaptive. Like, oh, the beautiful thing about adaptive is when my body is fluctuating, he's like, now I think perceptive can be that way too. Your body can be fluctuating and you just love bodies. So you're like, yes. But there's a lot of gifts to both sides. And the more I was able to recognize this is where he's at and this is the gift, that's been great. Now, the other thing is the more he's been able to get in his body, because I would say one of the reasons he wasn't perceptive is because he was out of his body.
Right.
He was out of touch with himself. He'd been physically abused and his body wasn't safe to be in, and physical touch wasn't safe for him. So
Yeah.
I think he shut off the perceptive part of him.
Right.
And I feel like as time has gone on, you've engaged that more and more.
Sure.
Do you not agree?
I don't know. I'm thinking freshly in the conversation.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
like, how do I feel about what she's saying? And
Yeah.
I don't have an immediate conclusion about that. I'm letting it steep internally.
Yeah. But this is why I wanted to bring it up, because I think it can help you understand. I know a lot of people who feel fluid in their sexuality, and that is that they have a higher adaptive than perceptive. And so there's something that they are looking for emotionally. And so it's not really, is it a guy or a girl? It's where do I get this need met?
Yep.
And then that can be very confusing if that's the only way you know how to figure out.
So confusing.
Yeah.
And then like you say, you're adding on top all these different narratives of what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to look like. And even if you take that example of, I mean, I've been in consulting sessions with people who've described this, like, my husband just doesn't want to have sex with me, like, or he won't want to do it very often. And because of that stereotype, men are supposed to be really proceptive.
Right.
Women then some women can then internalize that as shame
Something
and
wrong
judgment
with
towards
me.
themselves. There's something wrong with me, or I just must not be attractive enough, and men doing it the same to themselves.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Why am I not wanting to have sex with my wife 24/7? Like, and not actually really understanding that piece of, maybe it's the emotional connection, or maybe it's a type of emotional connection or a quality of emotional connection that I find really attractive, that draws me into somebody.
Yeah. And that gives, like, an inside marriage, if you can have that curiosity, then you can give your partner a roadmap
Right.
to attraction.
Right.
So if you're the husband and you're just not wanting to have sex, instead of hating yourself for it or blaming yourself, being like, what kind of safety or connection feels good? What are we? And I think also this describes for women too, if their emotional needs aren't getting met, they can all of a sudden stop wanting to have sex.
Totally.
Because if a huge part of your sexuality is this adaptive, emotionally connected part, and that part isn't getting met, your attraction isn't going off.
Yep.
And so what we can do is we can actually have a conversation with our spouse of like, hey, there's these two parts. There's this body part and this emotional part. And I need some more of this emotional part to help get my engine revved up. Like I need some help.
Yep.
Like these are some ways that I can connect. And it is hard if you are different.
Yeah.
If you have a highly perceptive one partner and a highly adaptive another partner, then you're both having to compromise in how to meet each other. But that's also a beautiful growth.
There's a few thoughts I was having. Also, is it called perceptive or proceptive?
Proceptive.
Proceptive. Gotcha.
Good question.
I've heard perceptive, I think, come out of your mouth sometimes.
I meant
proceptive.
Close enough.
So when I'm thinking about those two things, I guess I kind of imagine that if you go on a journey of getting a balanced connection with your physical body, like you start actually reconnecting to your physical body and you start connecting to your emotional well-being, that there's somehow potentially a blend of a balance between the two where you're expressing yourself out of that adaptive, right? Adaptive and proceptive, like they kind of blend over and you find yourself being provoked sexually by both avenues. Does that feel like, I don't know, I just imagine that.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, again, like not to throw any shade on perceptive, we probably would have very little attraction or very little sex if it wasn't for that.
Right.
So
yeah.
So it's a really good, important thing.
It initiates.
It creates drive.
Yeah.
We need it. And we all have bits of it. Like,
absolutely.
We all have, parts adaptive and parts proceptive.
Yeah.
I guess what we're talking about is, can we get to a space where we can engage in both of those?
Yeah.
Whereas, some people might find themselves at the present moment, like me, leaning quite heavily in one direction.
Yeah.
So leaning quite heavily towards adaptive and away from proceptive. I imagine that as I go on the journey of getting safer inside of my body, it will feel safer to engage with desire. It will feel safer to engage with want in a physical capacity.
Yeah. But I would imagine that you'll always be higher in adaptive.
Yeah.
Like that's your natural bent. Like I think there's like a natural, because I would say I am adaptive, have engaged perceptive, but will always probably have a little bit of a bent. Now,
lean that way.
And if I was listening to you as a consultant, which I'm not, you don't need help. You're a great friend, but I wouldn't even tell you to worry about perceptive yet. I would tell you, just start learning about your adaptive. What does that mean? What are you drawn to? What are the feelings that are euphoric for you? What are the feelings you can notice that feel good, so that then you can look for those, like, you've been dating all the wrong kinds of guys. So now it's like, oh, I think we have a clearer pathway for the kinds of guys that you would be attracted to. But it's not even that you need to fix the perceptive part yet.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I guess that would be like a main takeaway that from my experience with this, would be, can we get curious about all the different ways that we have judged our sexuality, how it's showing up, the ways that our attraction is showing up, the spaces where we've said, this is weird or wrong, or I don't know why it's not looking like it does in the movies, or it's not sounding the same way as it does for my friends. Can I get curious about my own experience? Can I get more accepting of my own experience? And then when I can get a bit more accepting of it, I can learn to sit with it more and notice it more. Like I'm saying, I've spent a fair bit of time sitting with guys and just tuning into myself. What is it that I'm enjoying here? And like you say, I've just been trying to squeeze myself into this mold of, I can be attracted to any guy. Like I can figure out how to be attracted to any guy, rather than valuing my own internal experience and wants.
I also think something that it's helped me with the concept of this is not having to hate or stereotype anything. Like, I think, I felt so ugly growing up and so inadequate physically. So the idea of proceptive men felt terrifying to me because I felt like I would always not be enough for them or please them. Like, I remember just a sense in my body of fear of that type of sexuality. Now, it's not even that that's true, because like I said, I dated a guy who was perceptive and he loved me the way that I was. And so but the judgment was there. Yeah. The fear of it was there. And so it was really helpful for me to know that adaptive people did exist. Yep. Like, that was really healing for me to know that you can find people there's so many varieties. And I think just the idea of like sexuality being more on a spectrum than there's just this one type of person. Because if you've had if you've had an interaction with a certain type of sexuality and it felt really unsafe, then like it would have to be like, well, then men just aren't safe.
Totally.
And I think that that's the edge I leaned on. Men just aren't safe. Men's sexualities aren't safe. Like, it just doesn't feel, because of this one little itty bitty slice of what sexuality was. Felt unsafe to me. And that's why I'm wanting to make clear there are really healthy, beautiful, proceptive men out there. Totally. But it was helpful for me to widen my view that there is a spectrum and that there were lots of other pieces. But again, even with that, even being so drawn to somebody because they felt safe because of their adaptive nature, I still judged because it's getting rid of the two categories or deciding that one is innately more like, so I think I used to think about being a woman and trying to be my idea of what a perceptive woman would be, which is just like so sensual and sexy all the time and just naturally knows how to do all that. Yeah. And so I felt broken as a woman because I was like, I'm not that. Yeah. But my sexuality has come alive a lot inside my marriage where I felt really safe and really loved and accepted. My sexuality showed up. So even letting go of my own judgments of myself based on that there's only one thing that is attractive to be. Yeah.
I have a few thoughts. One with perceptive, I can't help but think that a lot of men have been demonized for being perceptive.
Yeah.
Right. Even though I'm adaptive mostly, there's perceptive that's still there.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But there's predominant expressions of perceptive that a lot of men have expressed in the past. And, they were very much like, oh, men just want sex. They're just physically looking you up and down and ogling you. But there is a sense of a proceptive sexuality, right there. That's like, oh, it's not about them being dirty creepers. There's a draw and a desire because there's a physical attraction that's there. Yeah. So I think that there's probably a lot of men that have a lot of shame around that because they've been bullied so much by the conversation of you're just looking and taking from me with your lustful eyes. Your horn dog. And then there's also the aspect that I think a lot more men have been perceived as proceptive because they weren't allowed to have the adaptive as an expression. So
I bet a lot of men faked it.
Absolutely. And pushed themselves into
did the dirty talk about women's bodies just to blend in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I know clients I've met with, I've seen a lot of men that were like, well, I had to I just made up locker room talk so that I felt like I was doing what they thought was acceptable so I could be masculine.
Right. Because they had diminished the expression of their masculinity based on their adaptivity and their sexuality. Right. And it also makes me, the other thought that I had is this idea that we build these entire identities around sexuality, right? Which is, to me is destructive. Like, and when I even talk about identities around sexuality, I'm even talking about like, oh, I must be bad because I'm having this adaptive expression. It must mean that I'm X, Y, and Z, or I must be bad because I have this proceptive sexuality. And
Yep.
and so there's this whole, again, this judgment, judgment, we come and we build, that judgment makes an identity statement out of like
It's really good.
the ways we're expressing ourselves, right? And so once you remove, because that's something that you're talking about, you remove the identity statement, you were removing the judgment, and you came in with curiosity and said, hey, this isn't a conversation about identity, whether or not I'm good or bad, whether or not this means I'm this or that. It's just, okay, I want to understand myself better. And once you started understanding yourself better, it completely changed for you.
Or it empowered you.
And then instead of it feeling like a stressful, experience.
Right.
Of resisting against yourself.
Yes. Like I hated dating.
Yeah.
Hated it. Found it so stressful. Because, ultimately, if you peel it back, like I'm pushing against myself. I'm trying to push myself into this judgment labeled idea of this is what it's supposed to be like to like somebody. This is what it's supposed to be liked by somebody. Of course, that's going to feel stressful.
Yes.
Of course, that's going to bring anxiety. Whereas actually peeling some of that back and getting more curious and more accepting with myself and just allowing myself to like what I like, to like emotional connection with guys, to lead with that, to lean on that, makes dating feel so much more enjoyable.
Yeah. I do want to just say, because we're saying that there's an innate, we're saying basically you can innately be more wired perceptive or adaptive. When we are talking about perceptive, there is still an accountability, if that is you, to learn how to manage that well.
Yeah.
The same way as if you're adaptive, there's still accountability for you to learn how to manage that well. Yeah. Like if I'm drawn, let's say that I'm drawn to emotional validation, then I'm going to pay attention to not being validated by other men besides Justin. Yeah. If that's something that affects my sexuality, then that's something that I manage. And same with perceptive. I know women who are very perceptive and say crazy, crude, like horrible things. I think it's funny that women think, I think it's crazy that women think that they can, and they'll do it to me and I will be like, what are you, like, not to me, like at me. They'll talk to me about people I know in a crude and demeaning locker talk way. And I'm like, no, nobody, you don't get a free card to do whatever you want because this is how your sexuality works. You still have to manage you. Whatever side of the spectrum you fall on, you manage you.
Totally. Yeah, because you can be adaptively attracted to things that are horrible.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah, because of our experience, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Like I would say I'm probably more drawn to people who are avoidant than I am people who are anxiously attached. Because my dad is avoidant and my mum is really avoidant. So that's what's felt normal to me. So I'm going to be attracted and drawn towards something that feels familiar, even though I'm already avoidant enough.
Yep.
So
Totally.
So yeah, it can go both ways. I think it's about that piece of, can I understand me without shame, without judgment, get curious about my experience, and then work with my experience, like good and bad. Like what are the spaces where I can notice that I'm drawn to something quite unhealthy?
Yes.
And do the work to engage with that emotionally or physically in my body, or where are the places where I'm drawn towards something that actually feels really life-giving and healthy? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I want to add to that. When conversations like this happen, whether they're about personality types or sexuality, or give it a list of things, it's, people easily will chalk it up to, well, this is just the way I am.
Yeah.
Instead of like, there's components of this is how I operate and what is moving to the needle towards healthiness in the way that I manage myself and live a lifestyle of balance and connection to myself and to others. And that's a question that we have to begin to ask instead of, I think, weaponizing things like
This is
this.
just how I'm made.
That this is just how I'm made, and this can justify any actions that I take in the world around me.
Well, and that's why I think adaptive is so fascinating, because you can actually change what you are. Like, adaptive is in its name.
Yep.
Like, I can grow. Like, I've grown different ways to be attracted to you, because I'll start to notice something and I'll notice like a little bit of it feeling good. And then I'll think about how it feels good. And then I'll purposely pay attention to it more. And then I'll engage that more. And then I've consciously grown lots of ways to be attracted to you that weren't
Do you got a list of those? You want to show those with me behind the scenes?
Guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say like blowjobs is a great example of adaptive sexuality.
She went there. Okay, here we go.
No, because it wasn't that I was innately grew up being like, man, I can't wait to give a blowjob. Like, that is not how I felt.
Really?
Yeah. And it wasn't my initial thing,
you.
but I was able to.
But you're pretty thumbs up about it now, right?
Oh yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do I.
Yeah. But that was a journey. That was a journey of me going through like, what about this feels good? What about how can I be in my body during this? What about this is hot? What and starting to put reward around that area. Yeah. And now it is something that I genuinely enjoy and don't think about, and it's nice.
Yeah.
And I miss it when it's not there.
So do I. Look at that. We have so much in common.
Okay.
No wonder we got married.
But my point is just
I'm
that
feeling a bit awkward.
Adaptive is an incredible gift. So if I am only drawn to dysfunctional things for sex, there is an ability to go on the journey of rewiring. And it doesn't mean you have to rewire everything about who you are, but there is a capacity to learn. Like, I think that when you get into a relationship with a guy that is emotionally safe and connective, and you start to grow your attraction, and then you get in your body, I think you'll find the ability to grow proceptive attraction as well. So I think, but we just got to start with where we're at, go on the journey of understanding ourselves, and go on the journey of communicating with our partners. And I think what this can do is help you not have to have a specific label on yourself that is what culture wants to say.
Totally.
This way you get to allow yourself to understand where you're at and what's going on.
Yeah, for like a good chunk of time, I was like, oh my gosh, like, am I gay? Am I bisexual? What is going on?
Yeah. What category?
Because I have to put a category on it, or I have to put a label on it.
We all got to categorize, don't we?
Yes.
As humans.
And, but actually, if you peel it back and you're like, oh, I'm just attracted to emotional safety and connection.
It's really powerful.
Okay. You're like, that's what I'm drawn to.
That's what I'm drawn to.
Yes.
Yeah.
We should do a conversation at some point about one of the words you talked about was like, dysfunctional stuff inside of your sexuality, and kind of like have a conversation about what that means. Like, how do I know if there's dysfunctionality, and how is that not assessing like, oh, there's something here that's destructive to my well-being.
Yeah. That's really more what I meant.
Yeah. Right.
Just if there's something that's happening that is destructive to you,
to my well-being and my relationships around me, why am I drawn to this?
Yeah.
How is it? And what would it look like? Like, what would non-destructive look like? Like, how would that align with a sense of self-value and self-love and things like that? We should do an in-depth conversation around that.
Yeah. Well, I hope this gives people a little bit more understanding of themselves and what they're drawn to, and a little bit less. I mean, it helped me judge people less. Yeah. And it helped me kind of soften towards myself and others.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Hopefully that helps you guys with that too. We have a life consulting masterclass. Ruth is our second-year overseer. She is brilliant, and that's why we have her doing that.
Yeah, you are. Smart.
And you guys need to, if you want to join it, it starts in January, but you got to sign up ASAP, because there is pre-work that you do before getting into this school, so that we have a little bit of a foundation that people have built. There's a course you go through and a book you need to read. And so the time for you to do that is now. So you don't feel
get your
stressed.
applications in. You can go to Justin and Abi, that's abi.com. And you can go to our Life Consulting Masterclass page. And there's going to be an apply now button with an in-depth application. We know all about your business.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day in my interviews, and they were like, man, I felt like I was sharing so much. And then I realized I know everything about your life already. So it wasn't a big deal.
We've had so many people say that the application form is like therapy in itself.
Oh yeah.
They have to connect to themselves and it's so good.
Yeah.
But you can either take the school if you want to become a life consultant and that's a career you're looking into, or if you want an emotional health journey deep dive for a year with a group of people that are as committed to emotional health as you are. And vulnerability and growth. We had a couple this year find each other and get married.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Marriages abound.
Some adaptive attraction going on there. Maybe.
Here's the deal. If this episode has impacted you, or you feel like this is going to help some of the people around you get better clarity in their journey, rate, review, subscribe, and share this thing, because we really want to help people break out of those places where they feel a bunch of shame and disconnection from themselves. And when they can better understand their sexuality, it's like you start thriving. Like there's something inside of you where you came out of that shame, and there's so much more joy and peace and happiness in your life because you're not like under the weight of all of that shame and self-hatred and judgment that comes with it. So
yuck.
Yeah, all the yuck. So share it.
Yuck.
That's anything else, guys?
You have any last closing thoughts?
Less of the PDA, guys. Come on.
Less of this.
Ew. Gross.
Ow.
It's been dark.
Ow.
It's been dark.
All right. I am leaving. I'm done now. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.